Okay, nice.
Yeah, that should be good.
Welcome to Command Control Power. Thanks everyone for joining us and listening. As a reminder, we do live streams for patrons. So that's a new feature of the show. If anyone wants to sign up to become a patron, you get a t-shirt, you get random perks like things that I send out to patrons, things that I create in the community and send out. Also, this live these live broadcasts that we do. So we'd love to see more people signing up for Patreon and hearing more of the behind the scenes episodes that we do, but also to participate in these public shows as well. So
Right.
anyway, thank you
So
all for listening.
right. Thank you. To be clear, like Joe had just said, that you can not only participate in the Patreon shows, but you can also participate in the public shows. So the ones that you're going to be listening to today, if you're a Patreon member, you could come in here and participate in the conversation. So that's a really nice perk. I wanted to start the show off talking about, I've got a couple of domains that don't have email addresses. One is daylightmac.com.
Ding.
There it is. Yeah.
Where you can go and you could buy a subscription to Daylight, which is a CRM for the Mac. And I don't believe I have an email address for that. And it just redirects to MacWorks. So I got it, and we've all seen these where you get those emails from these random people who tell you that they're white hat hackers and they're able to spoof your identity or your domain or your email address. And sure enough, I looked at this thing, and of course they're looking for some sort of a air quotes bounty. And I'm not going to send nobody nothing. I can't even buy an egg sandwich. So
today's prices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sure enough, this white hat hacker was right. He could kind of like do a spoofy thing with the domain, or any domain you kind of squat on that you're not running email out of. And so I threw this out on Slack, and I got some really good responses. So Trevor Sysak, who's really a great contributor on Slack, he directed me to a link that we're going to share in the show. And it's basically a Cloudflare directions on how to protect your domains that don't have email. And then the conversation contributors in the Slack chat there said, like Tim Pearson said, honestly, why isn't this a default action for purchasing a domain for all registrars?
It's a great.
And Adam Rice said, geez, I should probably do this for all the domains that I'm squatting on.
Right.
And Glenn Kowalski said, yeah, this is a great tip. So I'm surprised it hasn't come up earlier in any of our discussions or in just, us doing business. But it's a thing. It's a thing. And I think you should really take a look at it. Again, the URL is really helpful. And it tells you how to do it and takes a couple of seconds and you're good to go.
And so you're using Cloudflare for your DNS as of right now?
No. They just posted how to do this. They you got to basically set a DMARC policy and a DKIM and a SPF. Just very much the same thing. That was one of the articles in the Tidbits Content Network that you could actually post to your blog this month if you're a subscriber. So thanks, Adam Angst, for posting that article. I was kind of on the fence of whether I should send this to my users because it's pretty inside baseball, talking about these types of things, domain keys and DMARC policies. And I thought, like, what the heck, if I get one job out of it or one or two jobs, where people are like, geez, I read what you said. It sounds like I should have this. Do I have this? And I would say, I don't know, let me check. And if not, we'd have some billable time. But Cloudflare, just as a gift to the internet community, just tells you pretty much what you need to do to protect your domains that you're not running email off of.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem, like you said, and just to read from the communication from the ethical hacker, as you mentioned, that you had shared with us. It says, recently I came across an email spoofing issue on your website that I would like to bring to your attention. The issue allows anyone to send emails from the address hello@daylightmac.com in this case to other users. So like you said, spoofing the email and then find the details. So they explain the details. But what I thought was interesting, like you said, why don't we hear about this more often? Well, I think I just found a clue in this. So you're not using Who is Privacy, I
No,
imagine. Right.
no.
So I think that the default with a lot of registers, well, at least with Namecheap now, because it's the one I typically use, is that they enable and give you for free the Who is Privacy feature. So
Hmm.
like if someone, so I imagine what this ethical hacker does is they just run a script that looks for domains that don't have a DMARC record, and I guess, well, maybe first of all don't have MX configured, like don't have MX records, and then
Right,
don't
right.
have DMARC, and then they like just spits out an email and sends you an email basically explaining the issue and puts in your little website there. But that means they have to also be able to not only like identify websites that don't have an MX, don't have a DMARC, but do have an entry in the Who is records for, a technical contact, let's say, or any contact. And if you're using Who is Privacy, like, what I'm not actually sure of is like, do they forward contact, attempts to you? Like if someone tries to do this and you have Who is Privacy, I don't think they can reach you. And that's
Yeah,
the
I
whole
don't
point
think
of
there's a forward of any
privacy.
kind. Yeah.
Right. So, it may be that like, I mean, this may be happening to a lot of people who aren't hearing from an ethical hacker about it and aren't hearing from anybody about it because you're just kind of on your own. And to your point, like, why isn't it the default? Like I forget who made that point. Why isn't that the standard? Right.
Right, right. So again, to add clarity to your point, Joe, it just, if you did have Who is Privacy, it doesn't keep someone from spoofing your domain.
Right.
It's just you don't, you know,
Yeah. Well,
you're not going to
but
get the
again,
spoof.
exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. You're not going to get an email and nobody's going to be able to contact you. No ethical hacker can reach you because they can't look up your Who is contact info. But yeah, so what it means is that anyone can send an email from your domain because there's no other system in place to say it's not really it's not really you. So it is kind of a big problem. I mean, they could write an email saying, "Hey, I'm the owner of daylightmac.com. Do you want to like, whatever, do you want to, send me some money and I'll sell you my website?" And I don't know. I mean, hopefully they're protected, through escrow and things like that and other ways of like preventing some kind of fraud like that. But I don't know. That's just the first thing that comes to mind. But there's probably a lot of things if you can pretend you're from a company that you're definitely not from,
Right, right. How about your domain, Sam's Gone Wild, Sam? Sam'sGoneWild.com. Are you going
Oh,
to
I'm too old for that. I sold that a few years ago. I just, I'm almost 50, man. I got to put that to bed.
Okay. All right.
It should now the new website is samwaswild.com, but no
Sam is mild.
Sam is mild. Yeah. Sam gone mild. Nice. That's good. Oh, that's a good tip though, Jerry. That's a really important one. So I like the idea of so we've been thinking about this recently with clients. Like, if you have a client on your roster who's paying you monthly, is this the kind of thing that you should put the burden on them? Like, send a blast to everybody, and then on the off chance that some of them wonder and say, "Does this apply to us?" Like, then you engage with them. Like, what I'm wondering is if they're on your roster as like a monthly plan subscriber, like, can this be part of the offering? Not to do it for free, but to like review their status and to send recommendations more proactively about anything that you like, non-standard setups that they have or room for improvement. Because it results in more billable for us. Like, it's not like, this is out of just the goodness of our hearts to do it. Or it doesn't have to be part of a monthly plan if you're charging for consulting time or projects or whatever. So one example we have recently is just doing a review of email security in general. So actually it's really the same topic, but specifically like with Microsoft 365 accounts that most of our clients are using, going in and making sure that there isn't some legacy setting where they're not using MFA and they really should be. Or, like in certain cases for like certain companies, maybe for everybody, they should really be using Microsoft Defender, to protect against certain kinds of spam and phishing and spoofing and all that stuff. So like going in and making these recommendations. So best practices specifically for email services in this case, we're preparing a list of bullet points of like, this is what we've developed over time. I mean, we've been doing this for a while. In the early days, there was no MFA, or it was like very minimally used. In the early days, it wasn't necessarily considered best practice to make a separate admin account and like not have, if it's like one person in their company, they would be the admin by default. You'd create their address, they're the admin. That's all that exists. I think it's considered best practice. This is what we do. This is what I think Microsoft recommends, to create a global admin that's unlicensed. So like in Microsoft 365, you go in, you create a new user account. It's like, tech company or support at or whatever it is. It's like, let's just say in my case, CIMAC at, the company domain.com, their company. And it's an unlicensed user. So while it's an email address, or it looks like an email address, you can log in with it, but you can't send email. You can't receive email using it. I think you can have the email be forwarded to you. And the point of that is that the client doesn't have admin rights, or if they have admin rights, they have their own admin account. That's like client admin at thecompanydomain.com. That's different from their jsmith at companydomain.com. So are you guys with me so far? Do we all, is that how you do it, Sam?
Can
typically?
We just talk about what the viability of that, Joe? Because I have some strong opinions on,
I like strong opinions.
Well,
Sam,
so let me make my list of things, and then let's go back to the global admin concept.
We get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should. You can't go long because
No, Joe. We get it.
I have a whole story, Jerry. Okay. So all right, go ahead. What's your problem with global admin?
All these things that you're talking about, all these bullet points, I get that. And I think the bigger question is, can we sell these services to our client that we'd like to provide best practice? And I'm in complete alignment with everything that you're talking about. It's just a question of, we can't even get these people to I had one user just finally get off of Rackspace. They were using IMAP on Rackspace. Rackspace, just to refresh the listeners, blew up with their Exchange servers, and it just turned to a big hunk of garbage because they got infiltrated big time. Yeah. But they kept the IMAP accounts going, and this client finally made the switch, after much provocation from us, to go to Microsoft. So we can't even get them to do even step one. So to try to present, some piece of paper, virtual or otherwise, to Mr. Customer and say, hey, this is really where you need to be at for 2024. And if you're not, you're just ticking time bomb and you're going to get hacked. I can't sell that. I feel like you could lead these horses to water, but you can't make them drink.
It depends on the client, I think. There are certain clients who are like, oh, what? We need that. We need to jump on that. And there are others that are like, whatever. I have clients like that too, Jerry. I really do. And they find out the hard way, usually, in some form of another. I have a story about that for a little while later. But that's, it depends on the client. I think you have to do a little convincing at times. And it's not just to make money either. It's like, you guys got to be secure. You can't do this,
Yeah. I have very few clients that are willing to spend money like this.
Yeah.
And
say
whatever you...
we're not talking about a lot of money, are we? This is on a per client basis.
No, a couple hours work or whatever. Sure. No, I get it. Yeah.
Well, also, it's also our responsibility to make the recommendation. That's how I feel too. It's like, I'm not going to
let them say no. It is my opinion.
Exactly. I don't think I'll be blamed if I don't make the recommendation and, they don't know to ask, and we just leave it as is and hope for the best. And it's like, maybe I don't even notice, they're not using MFA, the main user is an admin and whatever, and they're not using MFA. That's a pretty bad situation. I may not notice it, and that'll probably get them into trouble someday. I don't think they're going to blame me. I think they're going to call me for help, and I'll get some billable time then. So I could just let it go. But I do think it's our responsibility to be proactive about that and say, hey, we've done a courtesy review of your account, and here's our standard recommendations. And I'm not going to go into my list, but it's basically we're going to, separate the global admin account. We're going to turn on MFA, whatever. Make sure all the users have MFA enforced, and all the detailed thing that we're building out our list. And the thing is though, so we can say a blanket blast to all clients, here's what we recommend. And maybe it will be a newsletter, or something like that, where we send it to everybody who we know has a Microsoft 365 account, for example. But if we want to actually make specific recommendations, we've got to do some legwork up front. And that's the part where if they're not going to go ahead with it, they're not going to take your advice, the incentive is not there to do the work up front and detail like what needs to be done. So I think it's really like the initial contact has to be pretty minimal. It has to just be like, these are our recommendations, things have evolved, the security landscape, blah, blah, blah. Have ChatGPT write something, whatever. And just all I need to do the work up front is make a list of all the clients who probably need this kind of review done and recommend the review and call it something fancy like, an email security upgrade or an email security enhancement or whatever it is. And they're going to know that that's a pretty important thing. Like, oh yeah, I'm worried about my email. I get a lot of this spam, it's like, everybody's like, I get all this junk, so they're kind of just worried about email in general. So you say, well, we're going to upgrade the security of your email. And if they write back, like you said, Sam, if they say no, okay. I mean, look, if I need to point back to that email in a year to make myself feel better that
file that away,
catch something. Yeah. Or because they blame me in a year or something. And then I say, well, look, I tried to, anyway, so you get the point of that. And if they say, oh, it sounds good. Like, what would this entail? I'll say, we can do a half hour of discovery to just, log in as a global admin and say, well, it looks like, 9 out of 10 users have MFA turned on, but we really should work with, Jim about this. And also, like, I noticed your account is an admin still, whatever. So you make your little recommendations in more detail and you say, I think it's going to be another hour of, billable work. So you got the half hour of discovery, you got another hour, whatever. Again, it's not like crazy money. I think you can make the case to them. It's the right thing to do. That's my feeling. And I think this DMARC thing is a good part of that. Although I don't know many clients who have like a lot of domains they're squatting on that, like where they don't use email. So I don't know that comes up so much, but maybe that could be part of it just to check that too.
Actually, I've seen that more often than not. I don't know about you, Sam, but with businesses, small businesses along the way, when they first were getting going, the owner bought a couple of domains that were similar and they just sit there. And these are all great ideas. I just think like person gets a haircut, the hair is shorter, they could see the difference. Any of this stuff, they can't really see the impact at all.
So I'd like to comment on that too, because like one of the things we always say is the weakest link is the user, right? Like, I mean, there are other pieces that you can secure, but ultimately the user can do something stupid. So I really like, and I know we've talked about this before, but like the phishing campaigns, and we can legitimately show them, oh, user X click on every single spam message we sent them. And like, there are problems. So, and they're like, oh my God, they'll realize that. And that might cost me $50 for the like monthly license to do it for free if I wanted to. And I feel like that's an investment that I could be like, okay, now start paying us, and we'll secure this for you. That's more like a haircut, Jerry, where they can see something,
Right.
Show them how something goes wrong.
Sam, it's like user A clicked every spam email. Also, wish them a happy birthday for me because they gave us some of that info. And their driver's license is going to need to be renewed next week. So just, fair warning. It's like, because they probably also filled a bunch of forms out while they're clicking, And so, that's a great point, is to demonstrate that you have some weak links in your operation here. And, not to point the finger, but just to like, there's an opportunity for training. And that's great.
A little bit of finger pointing just for fun.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, so I had a question for you, or for you both, with the global admin account, because I do the same thing, but I oftentimes will actually use an email license because I like signing up for stuff for that client with their domain and things like that. The one thing that I've, because we'll do something like HCS admin ad or whatever. Yeah. But the one thing I've made the mistake on, and now I've since fixed, is I got to remove myself from the global directory in Microsoft.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Because then people start emailing us there, and I didn't realize it because they see us show up and they're like, "Oh, HCS, let's." And then I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
I have a rebuttal to that. I think if you take Joe's approach, where you don't buy the email account, in order for you to set up that global admin, you have to log in as on Microsoft.com. So it's
Oh yeah.
So it's CyMac at mycompany.onmicrosoft.com.
What were you saying about that, Jerry? That you have to do that, or is it better
to log in as for a non-paying account? That's the only way you could log in.
No, you can. No, I mean, I have this in place. I don't know what the
I thought you were saying
is.
That's your method.
No. So I create CyMac at theircompany.com.
As do I. Yeah.
But it's unlicensed. No email license.
I thought the only way you could log in is with the extended email address.
Yeah.
But anyway, so my response is the same, Sam. If that's the danger, is if you do sign up for an account, a paid account, then they're, like you say, they're going to start emailing you.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're in the global directory, where I think in Joe's case, you wouldn't be.
Well, you can, I think to Sam's point, you can remove yourself from the global directory, like after creating even the licensed account.
Yes.
Well, that's what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
but to Mike Kingsley's point, and I know you're probably going to bring this up, Joe, that is a piece, is to have like a non-email, like just what you were saying, I think, is to have an account that doesn't have an email associated with it, because it's that break glass account, like some crazy password on it, and it's the way back in.
Yeah, I mean, right. Mike called it they sometimes call it a break glass account. And he was sharing this as Microsoft's recommendation, which is, I think, probably where I heard it, years ago. Not necessarily that it doesn't have an email license associated with it, because it can, to your point, like you sometimes want it to. And we have some where they do, for the same reason, like you want to be able to sign up for something and manage their Dropbox with, your own company license at their domain or whatever. So that works. But the idea of it is that it's like you don't use it, like meaning they don't use it, because the whole problem is like if they use the account, and some hacker gets access to it and they're like, Goldmine, it's an admin account, all hell breaks loose. They start to do all the scamming and, set up forwarding rules and things you can only do as an admin. Maybe you change everybody's password and lock everybody out, and it's kind of like a big problem and whatever. So yeah, you just don't want a hacker to be able to get into an admin account if you can avoid it. And you do that by like not publishing what that account is. And to your point, making it a really, crazy password. And, I'm pretty careful with security. I'm sure you guys are too. So I don't worry about us, being the weak link in those cases, although it's possible. But if you use MFA and stuff, it's, it's probably fairly safe. So yeah, I thought that was a good, approach to just like, because some of it is like you have a new client. How much revenue can you generate from them? Like I'm not saying like scam them. I'm saying like offer them really valuable services. Like your email is going to be more secure. We're going to make sure everything's backed up. Go down the list of all the standard recommendations. Like sometimes those things take billable time. And so everybody wins, they get the benefit of the, strong recommendations that are really important for them. And you get the benefit of some extra work where otherwise, you're like waiting to hear from them and waiting for them to say, that I heard online or I heard on a podcast, or do I need this? Jerry, your thing about the book, they send you the link to some book that's not relevant and they're like, do I need this? And it's like, no, but like, let me tell you what you need. There's, here's the 5 things that we really standard across the board,
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Sam. I just want to make the point that, again, for this email security, a lot of times, even with the professional user, that translates into, oh, you mean I'm going to get less spam? And you say, well, no, that doesn't mean that. You're still going to get the same amount of spam. You're just going to be less hackable. And so sometimes they can't really see the payoff or the benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I got one client that, we've offered them this, it's a SonicWall cloud security platform for 365 and Google, and it helps protect against, malicious threats and stuff like that. And every once in a while, they'll just send us emails going, why are we getting so many spam this week? Like, it's crazy. I'm like, well, that's going to continue to happen. But also, every single time they ask us, I say, here's that quote that I was talking to you about that can help protect against some of this stuff. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they go silent. Few weeks later, same message, same reply. It's like one day you're going to realize that's how you keep asking me how. Here's how. I just showed you, but you don't want to pay for it. So.
Yeah,
whatever.
I get that they don't want to pay for a thing, and I agree with Jerry, your original point of like sometimes it's a hard sell for this stuff because they just don't have any budget, or they just don't like spending money, and they don't see the benefit, And I have an example of a client now I've shared with you guys where their email server is like in not good condition. It's like it's running like a really old version of Exchange. We definitely did not install it. There's some guy is hosting it or whatever. And like, it's gone down a few times. And, the answer is like, they had to, a router blew was like one of the quotes. I'm like, what does a router what, like, you mean it exploded? Like what does that mean? Like, is there danger? Am I, is he okay? I don't, like, what's going on? But, and we've been recommending for like literally years, like this server, like it's just, I don't have to say like what the recommendation, it's so obvious. And then recently, they're like had to configure a new user, or one existing user like got a new iPhone, or in one case had to delete the account and recreate it, and whatever the situation is, like you can't configure the account on the iPhone. And the answer from the guy who's hosting the email server was, oh yeah, that's like an Apple security thing. And like they'll roll it back. He said, they're probably going to roll it back. It's like in iOS 17.4 or something like that. I'm like,
Who is
what?
This person?
Like, and the other guy at the company told me, he said that he doesn't have a new enough iPhone to test it. Like the guy who's running their mail server, to like go through the steps to see if it's going to work and figure out what the right configure, and then send it to them. And we could figure it out. But we told them blanket, we don't support the server. We don't support the email server. We've told you enough times that it's just the answer is migrate to a new correct server. So, I mean, it is like pulling teeth, but I like having, like you said, Sam, that like thing on file. It's like, just refer back to that quote that we sent you and look at the date. Oh, it's from 2020, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, you don't have to even think about the question anymore. You just say, just see my prior email. Sorry. Like, yeah. So I don't know, but there's egregious ones out there like that.
I mean, it's just always, the sad part is many people learn after it's too late. We just had one today. It wasn't email related, but customer that we've been, and I know we have different stances on, like, let's say backing up a laptop versus server data and cloud data. But there's some clients that we work with, and that's their policy, where it's like, you put your stuff in the cloud or in the server, wherever, and we're not backing up your computers. It's just a thing. Right. So we've said it a million times. And of course, finally it happened. Someone's computer just completely went dead. Apple Store is now saying it needs to be replaced or restored, or I can't remember what they said, but they're like, can I get my data back? And I'm like, I'm not like twisting my evil mustache smiling, but I'm kind of like, I told you so many times. And now, no, that's the only answer. And I feel kind of bad because they're a nice person. And I'm just like, I can't believe how many times I told you this. I just can't. Yeah. And I'm frustrated because I do like them and I feel bad, but partially not so much bad.
Right.
What are you going to do?
It's clearly by no fault of your own, but at the same time, you feel for them. And like, that's kind of sometimes my recommendation is like, I don't want to ever be in this position where like you lose data and I'm going to feel bad about it. Like, I'm not going to feel as bad because I told you that you needed to back up, but I'm still going to like, I don't want that to happen to you, and it's like surprising that you don't seem to care,
Yeah, right.
The client doesn't seem to care. Because like you said, they just don't know until it actually happens. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
This is what you meant. Yeah.
That sucks. Yeah.
I do have a question related about this with you guys, because I know at least Jerry uses a service like this, I'm pretty sure, but for backing up or archiving 365 and Google, what services do you guys use? Or Jerry, I think you do use one, right? For like I use Backupify, for instance.
Yeah.
Is that what you use, Joe?
I don't. But that's on my list of these recommendations.
That's one. That's a good one, right?
Backupify. That's from you. Yeah, I got that from you. Yep.
But I actually had a question related to this because I was thinking about this. Someone mentioned exactly one of the things I was going to ask about, which is Synology Active Backup. Because I was thinking the other day, I was a little frustrated with, or more than a little frustrated with Backupify for a few reasons. And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, I'm going to leave these guys. And I'm like, well, can I? I mean, I don't know that I can. You have all the history of all this data.
Okay.
Where am I going to go? And the reason why I thought about this is because I had a new client that I picked up and they were using a service through GoDaddy that was backed. The back end was Barracuda. And I went and looked into this and they're like, sure, we can offload this data for you. It'll cost you like $12,000. And I'm like, oh, that's awful. We're not going to do that. And then I realized, what do I do if I want to leave Backupify? I don't think I have any options for that. So although I think it's a great service and it's done me well, I also worry that I'm now completely locked in to to something that if I wanted to change, I don't think I could.
So we're getting some really good feedback in the chat. Sam, as you mentioned, Chris, however, says Synology Active Backup for M365, and he says they either host their backups on a Synology at their office or they get the client as Synology. Mike Kingsley said the same recommendation. There's also a Google backup app for Synology as well.
Yeah, I have one client using that.
Mike says he calls it a reverse backup, and the nice thing is it's on a customer site instead of in the cloud, which is that's a great feature. I really like that too, to have the local aspect of that cloud backup. And then Chris says further, they back up. It sounds like they back up the backup to Backblaze V2 with immutable backups. So that's like really, really, really secure. Adam Rice says Drop Suite.
So that's what I use. I had to, actually, I had to look that up because I haven't
implemented for a second, Jerry. I was like,
in a while. Drop Suite is great. They have a multiple tenant interface that you can sign up many clients through it. It's very affordable, extremely responsive in terms of how the service works very reliably. And then I have one client that is using Druva that I inherited their Druva backup. And so we've kept him there because but I'm like you, Sam, I don't know if I can move them out of Druva successfully. So I think you'd have to almost start over, right, with the backup.
Right. And so that's the point of like some of the Synologies that people are talking about in the chat as well, is like you're not relying on a service. And like I said, through inheritance, we have a couple clients with this and we learned more about it as time went on. And, even on a few shows back, we were talking with Jason Harrison of Harrison Consulting, and he was talking about, private cloud versus public cloud. And these Synologies would be exactly fitting that bill of like, you're not giving it to some other entity. Right. You're holding it within them. There is a downside, I think, not secure wise, but a downside probably for me is that now I have to manage it and make sure that it's working and nothing is going wrong. I'm not saying that's not part of our job, but it is a nice thing, in my opinion, to be like, all right, it's backed up there. And if something goes wrong, that's their fault. But there is a positive to you owning it or the client owning it. And you're not relying on anybody in particular.
I definitely like the idea of the client owning it if it's Synology, as opposed to me having to maintain infrastructure for obvious reasons. We just talked recently again about how I've closed my office. So
I didn't know. I went by the office the other day and you were gone.
That's right. Check out the Patreon show for the details on people stopping by my closed office. I mean, I could see I think one of the recommendations Chris said is like you could just install it in their office, the client office if there is one, or even the CEO's home or whatever it is. And maybe it's dedicated to just that purpose. That's fine. That's, pretty totally fair. It could even be probably a little 2-drive, the DS, whatever the current, 202 or whatever that, the 2-drive one. Yeah. The little one, or 212.
Little baby Synology.
Yeah. And so like, if you were to do that, the idea of the switch, like switching from, like when do you leave behind, Drop Suite or Backupify or whatever, couldn't you just like pay for another few months and, while you're like staging the backup and now you've got the backup up to date on the Synology, and then that's, now collecting the new data going forward. And then after a certain amount of time, you can abandon the old system of backups once like the historical email is no longer needed. Because what am I missing? Is it just the current messages coming in that are backed up and going out? Or is it like, does it suck all the email in like a migration in that situation?
It's all previous stuff too, even stuff that people have deleted or users have gone away. So for legal holds, you kind of need that history.
Right.
So like if they got sued or something and they're like, we don't have that because we moved backup systems, they'd be like, well, that's not a good answer at all.
So this is maybe a long-term project then, because the idea is you could, put it in place now. I mean, I guess, in the case of a legal hold, you're talking, it's like what, 7 years or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably a long time to start a Synology backup now. And then in 7 years, I don't think I want to be doing this anymore. Maybe I probably still will be, but you get my point. Like that's a long timeline to kind of think about. So,
I mean, I know
the problem with Backupify right now.
What's the problem? No, it was just
keeping it. Yeah.
Datto got bought by Kaseya, and then there were a whole bunch of billing issues. They're still doing their thing. It's working, and it's not anything to do with the service. It's just our bills have been a mess, and there have been some problems with charges that they couldn't explain and all this other stuff. So it's been a bit nightmarish. So I was just looking into it and then realizing, oh, I'm kind of locked in. And, this definitely elicited a lot of talk in the chat. And I would agree with, what people were saying. And I am familiar with the fact that on the Synology side, the Microsoft Active Backup can do that stuff. It's just, actually, it kind of brings up a point similar to what Jerry was talking about. It's like, now you're saying, okay, pay this few $1,000s for this upfront cost, and it'll be good for you in the long term. And like, what do you want me to do that for? But like, you have to explain that well, that it's, necessary for many different reasons, not the least of which is legal.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that could make the case, depending on the client, a lot more strongly. Just like the legal hold aspect. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
For some clients, like depending on turnover, if they know that they have a lot of turnover, it's like the idea of preserving those deleted user accounts and things like that. I love the idea. I mean, I guess for you, Sam, it's like, just start recommending Synology Active Backup going forward, right?
Yeah, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, right. And then I guess you have these legacy accounts. To your point, you're kind of tied in with whatever vendor you go with for the long term, unless there's any kind of. I mean, I guess that's the original question: is there any migration path going from one backup company to a different backup company?
They're all proprietary, so it's like. And again, I didn't even really consider it that much until the situation with Barracuda, where they're like, I think it was $12,000 is what they said. It was multiple terabytes, but still, they were like, yeah, sure, you can get copies of all it will be in PST form, and it's $12K. And I was like, wow.
Plus, how much labor? It's $12K for that, but then like how much labor on your side to actually complete the job, right? It's like, so yeah, that's a lot.
It just gave me a moment of pause, and but cheers to all the guys in the chat about Synology. I think it's something I need to look at.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, so another thing that Chris Haver said was Synology Active Insight for monitoring. This was on my list to discuss, actually. I've complained on the show quite a bit in the past about, well, first of all, a few years ago maybe, Synology stopped sending notifications by relaying through their like notification server. Essentially, they used to send emails out like on your behalf with DSM-6 and prior, and then DSM-7 came out and they're like, oh, by the way, like there's no more notifications sent by email. So then you had to figure out a solution. So I tried different things. So I first was using Synology CMS, centralized management server, I guess, whatever, Synology CMS. So I'm running a Synology. Again, I'm maintaining infrastructure once again, a little Synology in my home office to run this Synology CMS server or host, and then have all my client machines, my client servers talking to it. So then like they're communicating with my Synology CMS host, and then my Synology CMS host is configured to send email notifications. So I get, bottom line is I get notifications about client server issues just by doing that. And that's free, other than the cost of the Synology hardware, obviously, that you have to use as like essentially your relay server. The whole point of that is to avoid having to configure SMTP on every single Synology that you manage. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to like deal with the problem if like suddenly it's not, how would I know if it's not emailing me because there's a problem? I'm not going to get that notification. So anyway, it just seemed like kind of not a great solution. So this was a kind of a workaround, but it's also clunky. And I found that like occasionally, I get a bunch of alerts like practically all of your servers can't talk to your CMS server for some unknown reason. It's just like glitchy, it's not great.
Yeah.
So I ended up recently landing on Active Insight for this. And this is exactly what Chris was recommending for monitoring, those servers of your clients for like the backup hosting and all that. But this is good for just monitoring in general. So this is my new recommendation for any kind of monitoring, really specifically for like especially file sharing servers. I mean, we have some Synologies that do just like time machine backups for clients, so we don't worry about those. We have those still under Synology CMS. I may configure those under Active Insight, but late breaking news, they actually restored the email notification server like relay system to a recent version of DSM, also DSM 7, point whatever 2 something or something like that. So you can actually do that built in now once again. So I think my new recommendation for this is use the built-in email relay thing that's built into Synology for the kind of like low, like the basic servers that are like, just backup servers are the main ones that like I don't really care about full monitoring for. But all the actual servers for file sharing, use Active Insight for that. It just works much better. There's a cost for that. I forget what the charge is to do that, but that's definitely a more robust solution for that kind of feature.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost is, but yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
I think just going back to the whole Backupify drop suite solution versus getting a Synology and that initial expense that you need to make, it's philosophically they're so different, in terms of what we're going to present to the customer and what the best solution is for them. That it's like, well, should you lease a car or buy your own car? So it's a hard sell. I mean, and then you kind of own it, right? You kind of, whereas if something, let's say you got them to get the Synology, right? Then the onus is on your shoulders to do the maintenance, to make sure it doesn't go sideways. And, it kind of eases the burden a little bit to offload it to his service, like Backupify.
That's always what I think about too. I mean, I think after hearing this show, Jason Harrison might want to come back on, but so we'll talk to him soon about this. But I think that is the whole point of that we've been doing that back and forth on, is like, do you want to own it and be in control of it and have the onus be on you if something goes wrong? Or do you want to just be like, I'll pay somebody and they'll just handle it for me?
Yeah, I mean, if you're fast and loose, you sell them the Synology, you make a little bit of money, and you keep on whacking them for services to keep it maintained and going. But if you're like me or you or Joe, and you're kind of resource constrained, and you don't want to be always turning the knobs and twisting the dials, and you don't have a deep bench, if you got 12 guys working for you, Synology is the way to go, because then you just keep them employed, keep them busy. But if you're like us, lean and mean, you have to weigh those options real seriously.
Yeah. I think that's the point. That's the point. Do you have the ability to maintain it? And if not, you go with the option that kind of curates it for you and takes care of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a lot of good opinions out there. And there are some customers, to Mike's point, that don't want to have perpetual license. They're already paying for stuff by the month now, where they didn't used to. They could pirate whatever they wanted, and now I still have some clients complaining about that. They're like, I used to, just put this on 5 computers.
How come we have to pay for Photoshop? Yeah. I don't want to pay for Photoshop. Right. I got Photoshop 6. Why isn't CS6 working?
But you're literally a graphic designer. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. They're complaining about it. Yeah.
I never understand that. People that don't want to pay for the tools of the trade, it's like, my example is always like, if you're like a guy who paints houses and you don't want to buy paintbrushes, like what sense does that make?
Just wrap the old ones in newspaper, they'll be ready to go again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
My wife got me a Craftsman drill one year for Christmas, and I tried to be excited about it. But like, where's my Makita? Where's my DeWalt? Where's my drill with some, and we've got that now. We've got
Craftsman, not too shabby. What are you talking about?
Oh, Craftsman, come on. I've had Craftsman wrenches snap on me.
Oh, really? Wow.
Pulling out the tranny.
Is that right?
Yeah,
do a lot of car work, Jerry.
Yeah, I know. I haven't worked on a car in a number of years. I can't figure out these newfangled cars.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be able to. It's like
yeah. No, I hear you though. It's just I don't know. I think there's some aspect where it's either dependent on the client, or, as you said, Jerry, what your team can handle, or your army of one can handle. What can I take on manually and have to check? Or don't get me wrong, I understand Active Insights can tell you this stuff automatically, but you are maintaining some of it in some capacity on your own, and that's on you. Right. And there is some nice factor there where it's just like it's being handled, and the company is big enough to handle a problem if it goes down. Hopefully.
Yeah, you're getting right. You're getting the emails. It's not another thing you have to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of a service, a managed service versus like hardware that somebody needs to deal with. Because what do they do if they need the email, Sam? Does that happen that often where they're logging into like, where they're logging into Backupify? It's a service, it's online. They know how to do that, right? In the case of Synology, they need an address. They need like some proprietary system that they don't quite understand. Like, I mean, I guess if they're already using a Synology for their file sharing, then maybe they already understand the idea of like their account name and password or whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the points that some other people are bringing up too, like there's the other aspect of like, where is my data going? Who has it? And where is it shared with other people's or other companies' data? And who has access to it on the support team over there? Those are all valid questions that a company might want to be like, no. Let's put a Synology in place. Let's have it here. I can see it in my office and I know that my data is there. There's some point to that too, Yeah. So I don't know. I'm playing both sides here.
Yeah, no, because I'm going back and forth too. Because at first I was like, oh, Synology does this. This is great. I'm gonna start using that. But yeah, the same debate comes up in my head about, first of all, the upfront cost to the client, and they may be averse to like spending money up front in some cases and prefer to spend a little bit every month. In other cases, it's the opposite. Like you said, Jerry, buying a car versus leasing a car. It's like, it's just a philosophical thing for some people. And then, the fact of ongoing, like, I need to be aware of it, I need to deal with it. That's not a zero cost. So that needs to go on my managed service plan, like some amount per month of like, updates, just keeping an eye on the Synology. Maybe it's already there. Again, if they have a file server in place, like maybe this is an easy add-on kind of thing. And you're already monitoring the server and whatever. I guess it just means that like, if they need the data in a pinch, like, there's a legal situation or whatever, they probably in a lot of cases will need to go through you as a reminder. It's like, what do I do? Whereas with Backupify, you just tell them it's Backupify and they're going to go to that website and they're going to log in. They probably have that saved, or you've helped them log in once and now it's saved. I mean, you can do the same thing with Synology. It's not like that much different because they could use quick connect and everything. And you could protect that with MFA and all that. So I don't know. I think I'm still leaning towards Synology, but yeah, it's good to know the options. And there's no easy resolution to this cloud versus, what is it? Point up for the cloud versus on-prem is pointing down in the basement, like cloud versus on-prem. There's no easy solution to that. But
I mean, I love the Synology. I mean, just for the guys in the chat and the gals, I love the product. I use a Plex. I use a Plex server all the time. I stream music. I do all kinds of things, that are for entertainment as well. So it's like fantastic. And it's been running for like 5 years and I haven't had the need to replace it. But I don't know, when you start making these real serious choices for clients, you're a bit of a cowboy. And as long as you think like, I'm going to live forever, and, I'm not going to get sick of the business and want out in 3 years. And as long as you can manage the clients, but, like how many of these do you want to take on? 3? I mean, again, it all depends on how deep your bench is. But, let's say it's yourself and a helper or something like that. How many do you want to do? 3, 5? I mean, how many do you want to do?
I don't know. Like Synology,
like take on. Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first one to very strongly recommend Synology as a file server for someone who doesn't want to use Dropbox and use the cloud solution that Synology has. That has worked great for me in years past. So I'll be the very first one to suggest that. But then, going this other level, I mean, I back up my own email through the Synology, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. Like just not wanting the responsibility, basically. There's a different level of responsibility, like with recommending and setting up a cloud-based thing versus hardware. Like that's just a fundamental difference. But counterpoint, because I think like Mike addressed something I mentioned, which is like, Synology has a web proxy address. Like I said, quick connect. You can just document that, right? I mean, it shouldn't be so complicated. Like, so what's the issue with, say, you've got your Hoodoo, right? You've got all this stuff documented. You give them the run book, and then don't they just have what they need in case they need to get to their email in a pinch, that's backed up, or the server's down. It's like, if they can't reach you and the server's down, it's not working. These are standard solutions. They call another consultant who can deal with Synology. Like, it's not that obscure. So I don't know. I wouldn't hesitate quite as much. I understand the feeling of like, I don't want to have to like be there. This used to come up for me a lot when it was a one-man show, especially, was like, how many more clients can I take on as just me? What if they all call me on the same day? Like, that's a problem, So I get that, but I don't know if in practice it's really as big of a deal,
Yeah. All I know is when we have this much chatter in the chat, we brought on a good topic.
Yeah, that's a great question for sure.
But I appreciate the insights and the input from everyone too, because it gives me some food for thought.
I mean, a distributed Synology that's doing email backup for a client, that's like your children. You've got to take care of them. You got to look after them. You got to make sure that they're, well fed and everything's working properly. So, it's a burden. It is a burden. And then, the clients paid all this money up front. And then you say, oh, and by the way, Mr. Customer, I need $85 for every month for me to make sure that all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed on your Synology.
Well, once again, the equations, the calculus on this comes down to number of users, probably amount of data, like, their kind of expectations, a lot of those questions. So if they're like Sam, you brought up, Jason Harrison, this conversation we had about cloud versus on-premises, and he's the on-premises guy. Now I think he's operating on a different scale than I am. I'm still dealing with, home users, residential users, and small businesses. Like, some of my larger clients are, 20 to 30-ish range, right? So like, that's going to mean like my solutions are going to be different probably than his, for example. Sure. And certainly like a solution, like you said, Jerry, $85 a month to like maintain the Synology, that's a fair price, for like monitoring, maintenance, updates, things like that. Just the responsibility, like it pays for you being responsible for that stuff. That doesn't work if the person is like if it's two people in the company. They could pay Backupify. What is it, Sam? It's like, is it $8 or $10 or bucks a month or something like that per user?
It's less than that. Well, it depends on what you're charging, but it's like $3 to $4 a month per
okay.
user.
Yeah, so, Drop Suite is just in the same price range, if not cheaper. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah, it's cheaper for us. That's what we charge.
Exactly. But like, so if you're going to resell Backupify versus charge for maintenance on an ongoing basis for a Synology, the difference in user, it's got to be, like for 10 users and above, maybe they're sort of comparable, or maybe at 20 users, the Synology hosted in-house over time will be cheaper to them. So on the lower numbers, it's way different though.
There's also the aspect of like, when it does go wrong and it's your Synology, you're like, all right, I got to fix it and the pressure's on. If they go wrong, it's like, you can team up with the customer and be like, yeah, those sons of guns, what are they doing over there? It's like, and you chill out, like pointing the finger,
Yeah.
Yeah. You point the finger and then don't they tell you to point it right back at yourself? Cause like, weren't you the guy who recommended this?
Yeah, well, maybe, but
jackasses over there.
For the short term anyway.
Mm-hmm. No, it's valid. I agree. I like to be able to say, I don't know what they're doing over there, but the service is down. We've been using them for years. This has never happened, whatever. But
exactly.
as opposed to being like, I gotta, I gotta get in my car and deal with this problem, Yeah. So yeah, great discussion. One more, speaking of some online services here, this came up recently for me. I think it was Adam Rice in our channel on Slack, mentioned, I don't think I've brought this up on the show yet, that somebody built the service that I was asking for. So in the past, I was complaining about, I'm getting all these emails from clients about like, is this a scam? Is this a scam? Is this a scam? And it's like, 9 times out of 10, it's a scam, right? And you're just like, yes, good catch, it's a scam or whatever. And then every once in a while, it's like, no, that email means your email service expires tomorrow. So like, thank you for asking, because I'm going to get involved and help you right now,
Right.
But so it's like, they do need to check. So I was like, if only there were a service where they could just forward the emails to that would like have already seen, thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of these questions. Like, is this a scam? Is this a scam? and be able to just reply back and be like, yeah, that one was a scam, you know? And sure enough, essentially that exists. So this is a relatively new feature from Norton. So these are the guys who used to make Norton Utilities, the little icons across the bottom of your dock there.
Yeah, and they could clean up your desktop. Yeah,
exactly. I think Jerry still uses them to rebuild his desktop every
He's on the honeymooners too, right, Norton?
Exactly.
Norton.
So Norton,
like
Genie, or it's called Genie by Norton, and it's a free scam detector. You can get it online. I don't know if they sell something related to this also.
I hope so.
But yeah, just go to, just do Genie by Norton, just search for that. And you can, like, I think copy and paste or whatever emails and texts and links and things like that, and have them analyze it and determine this. And this came up again recently because I was thinking it would be really helpful to have my operations manager be able to do more triage type stuff. Like, I don't need to look at every scam because, again, like 9 out of 10 times it's a scam, and she could probably tell pretty easily just by looking at it. But to be really definitive, it's like, you don't have to make the judgment call. Just check with this scam detector. So it's an interesting tool in case people have the same thought about like triage and stuff like that. Genie by Norton is that recommendation. So let me
it's
know
like
how
a
it works
BS
for people out
detector,
there.
except it's with email.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Pretty soon we'll have a live BS detector from AI, built into the Vision Pro. You just walk around, and if somebody's talking to you and they're trying to scam you, it'll just like it'll throw a little red alert thing or something. It'd be pretty cool. BS detector. Maybe that's what I should build. I've been trying to think about what would I build if I wanted to take advantage of a first mover advantage with this new platform, like what would I try to build? It's just a thought experiment. I don't think I'm going to even buy one, let alone, build an app or something. But there you go. Maybe a scam, maybe a BS detector in real life could be a thing.
Oh man. That reminds me of a scene in Silicon Valley, but not appropriate for the show.
Maybe talk about a Patreon show, Sam.
Good stuff, guys.
Yeah, this is good. I got one more little thing. I'll just round out the hour here, but this is on the topic of the scams and stuff. I try to pay attention to unseen security like holes that may not be obvious. So one is callback services, right? So there's companies out there that sometimes you need to call, and they say you can call. You can stay on hold, or we can call you back. We have your number. Yeah. We got to call back. So that's a third-party system that they use to do that, as far as I can tell, at least in some of the ones that I've seen. Is this our second Dolly Drive reference in a row?
In 2 shows.
Oh man, Mike Kingsley said use Dolly Drive to back up the email. All right, so we're going to retire the Dolly Drive reference and drinking game. Anyway, so think about if somebody hacked one of these callback services, and so now they know like that you're expecting a call back from the IRS or something like that, and they call into that. So I imagine like the IRS has really strong security in place, like where you can't just figure out that like I'm waiting for a call back from the IRS, but if you hack into these third-party callback services, you could exactly that I'm a live person that is, I'm already going to believe you when you call me back that, I am expecting a call back. So it just occurred to me, I had to make a call recently where like there was a callback service. So something to pay attention to out there. Speaking of scams, I mean, that one's probably like much harder to detect. So something to think about.
I don't have my tinfoil hat with me, but that one
Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I mean, if there was a way to detect it, I mean, I don't know how, but, and then kind of be man in the middle of that callback. So you'd be offering up your information willingly, essentially.
Exactly.
Well, it's going to get worse really fast, soon, because of the fact that, you can, in these language models, you can upload voice samples like we were doing about a year ago with some Steve Jobs stuff that we were fooling around with. Mm-hmm. And so you could get a phone call from one of your family members saying that they're in a lot of trouble and, go to Best Buy and get some gift cards for them. So,
because that'll help your trouble. Some gift cards. Yeah.
Yeah. But if it sounds like you,
that's right.
Like,
I know.
They're like, well, I don't know why you're telling me this, but if you say so, Sam, like I believe what you say. It's like to your point, Jerry, they hear the voice and they're like, that's,
Sammy's in trouble.
I do think about that one. I mean, what would you do? Are you going to proactively tell all your family members, if you ever get a call from me, just because it sounds like me?
Is what they said is what the general advice was, to have some kind of code phrase or code word.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
you don't like that?
I don't know.
The code word is Dolly Drive.
Exactly. I know. Darn it, you just now I got to change my code word. That's great. Gonna make a bunch of phone calls when we hang up now. Damn it.
Well done.
Good show, guys. Rosebud. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of Command Control Power. And as a reminder, we have a lot of chatter in the live show here, not just about Dolly Drive, but about a lot of other good contributions.
Love that too.
We love that too. And so if you're a listener but not a patron, we would really encourage you and invite you to support us on Patreon. So go to commandcontrolpower.com and click on support. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great one.